Okay. Yeah, I think we have to start over because we had a connection.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our beginners class. Today we are looking at landscape pieces. Now, joining me last week Thursday.
Their headphones.
I don't know.
Okay, so audio isn't very good.
I feel like it's
Sorry.
Oops. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our beginners class. We are looking at seascapes and landscapes today. And last week, if you joined me, we were looking at Amos Ferguson for inspiration, and we created a collage that had a lot of repetition and pattern in it. Today, we're going to bring in some of that repetition, but we're also going to look at something else. Now, for those of you who did not join me last week, my name is Katrina Cartwright. I will be your instructor, your teacher for today. And behind me are two paintings. So the painting over here, this was done by Eddie Minnis, and the one over here was done by Chan Pratt. So they're very similar. So Eddie Minnis was Chan Pratt's teacher at one point, and they both did a lot of landscapes. Now, what makes a landscape a landscape? A landscape, very simply, is just a picture or a painting, a drawing of an environment, an outdoor environment. And in that environment, you would be able to see things far away and things close to you. And there'd be a lot of items in it. So let's look at this. So you can see the things far away, like that coconut tree way in the background. Then you could see these houses as they come closer to you. And as they get closer to you, they go from small to bigger. And the biggest things in this painting are the ones in the front, right? These trees. This area in the front is called the foreground. Okay, very technical term, but basically the foreground means anything in the front. And the rule is that anything in the front, anything in the foreground of your picture is always bigger than anything in the background. You see way in the background there where that little tree can be seen behind that house, right? So anything in the foreground is close to you, therefore it is much bigger. Anything in the background is far away, so it looks much smaller. The middle ground is that in-between state, that space between the foreground and the background. And that's where things are medium sized, right? And all that does, it helps us to create distance in our drawings and our paintings to make it look more real, because that's how our eyes see things. When things are close to us, they look much bigger. And when things are further away, they look much smaller. And something else you will notice is that the things that are close to you also are a bit lower, start lower on the ground. So you can see this palm tree here. The bottom of it is almost to the bottom of this painting. But the houses, as they go further away, their bottoms go further up the page, right? It's a little trick. So that's a new word. We won't talk about it too much today, but that's called perspective. And that is when you have a line that starts from the bottom of the page and goes up and goes to a point. That's how we see things. So as things go further away, they start to get smaller and they start to look like they are higher, right? So we use foreground, middle ground, and background to help our pictures, our drawings, our paintings look more real and to create distance. So it looks like you can walk into the drawing, right? So you see the road, it looks like you can just keep on walking and keep on walking, right? So let's look over here. This painting by Chan Pratt, and both of these are Bahamian artists, by the way. It's a little different. And you don't see as many things in the background because he's concentrating on these huge trees that are in the foreground here, right? But if you look really closely, you can see some stuff in the background, like that house right there. You see? It's going a little further up the page. The road's going a little further up. And it feels as if that road just continues right off the painting. Like you can keep on walking. So Chan Pratt has used the principles, the concept of foreground and middle ground and background to help him create this distance in his work. So we are going to do the same thing today, but instead of a landscape where you see a lot of land and trees, we're going to do a seascape where we see the sea. So let's go over here where we can make some art. Okay, so why are we making seascapes today and not landscapes? Well, you know, today is all about making, creating a space that we love. And I think for most of us, we love the beach. We love going to the beach. We love the beautiful blue waters. The sand is so nice and white or pink, or like a really, really light yellow, depending on which beach you go to. The sea is cool, even though it's really hot outside, and you can play and get wet and get really, really dirty, and nobody tells you that you can't, because that's what you go to the beach to do. Now, the past few months, we haven't been able to go to the beach because the beaches have been closed. But also, if you're living in Nassau, you know there's only a few beaches you can go to because a lot of the other beaches are not accessible to the public. That means that everybody can't go. Only a few people can go, and most times those are the people who may own homes along the beach, or maybe there may be hotels who own the property in front of the beach. So we only have a few beaches we can go to in Nassau, and we haven't been able to go to them because the beaches have been closed, because you know we're experiencing a lot of challenges right now around the world with COVID-19. So I know that's a lot for you, but I'm sure you've been hearing about COVID-19 nonstop on the news. So instead of us talking about that, let's talk about our favorite space, because even if we can't go to it, we can create a space for ourselves, right? So today we're going to create a seascape. And in the seascape, we're going to put a sand castle, because when you go to the beach and you play in the sand, that's what you do, right? You make sand castles, you dig in the sand, you go in the water, you play, you splash, you come back out and you go back in the sand again. So to begin, we are going to start marking out where our, first of all, where our horizon line is located. Remember, we spoke about that. So you can use a coloring pencil or a regular pencil, doesn't matter. So remember, we talked about horizon lines last week, and the horizon line is where the sea meets the earth, or where the sky meets the earth, or where the sky meets the sea. That is that line that's separated. So, you know, if you're looking at, imagine you're watching a ship sail away, and you see there's this line right where the sky meets the sea, and the ship sails until it hits that line, and it's only a dot, and then suddenly it disappears. And it disappears because the earth is round. So it went around the curve a little bit, but it's still on the planet. It's still moving. It's still going towards a new place. So that line really just marks how far we can see. It doesn't mean the earth stops. It just means that we can't see past that curve because the earth is round. So we are going to draw a line that separates, shows where the sky meets the sea. And because we have a lot to draw, we're not going to leave too much space for the sky. So I'm going to start somewhere up here and draw this line. You know, you draw very lightly. By the time we're done, we're going to have that covered with something anyway. So that's the first step. That's the beginning. So this is our sky up here, and this is our sea here. But remember, we're putting a sand castle here. So we have three different levels. We have sky, sea, sand. So the sand castle is going to be in our foreground. The sea is going to be in our middle and background. So, and the reason we're going to do it that way is because remember, when the sea is close to you, think about how nice and bright and it's a pretty green blue, right? But as it gets further away and it gets deeper, it turns a really, really dark blue. So we're going to show that today as well. So let's make our markers. We're going to draw a line here. We already drew our line where the sky meets the sea. We're going to draw another line. You could draw along with me. Probably like, you know, you could use your fingers to help you. Maybe a full finger length below that, maybe a little longer. And that's going to be where our sea gets really dark, a really dark blue. That's going to be our middle ground. Sorry, that's going to be our background. Sorry. The background is here where the sea gets dark blue and the sky. And then we have our middle ground here where the sea is a nice, bright, light blue. And down here is where we're going to put our sandcastle. So this is just the beginning. This is just to help us figure out where things go. Now we're going to start from the back and work our way to the front because we are going to be doing some collaging today. So you should have your paper, of course. You should have, it's also good to have another scrap piece of paper to use, construction paper, markers, glue, crayons as well, or coloring pencils, and scissors. So you're going to need a pair of scissors. You can have your small scissors. I have a bigger pair of scissors because my hands are bigger than yours. Always remember to cut away from you, not towards you. So let's get started with our background. And you can really have a lot of fun with this. So I'm going to use this blue for the middle ground. And I think for the background, since I don't, oh, there we go. I have a pretty dark blue. Not the same color, never mind. It looked different under the light. Think for way in the back. And remember, we don't have to use exactly, we don't have to use realistic colors. So in this case, with my construction paper, I'm going to use purple for the background of the sea where it gets really dark. I'm going to use this blue here for the middle ground, okay? So that's just a beginning. Now, if you do not have construction paper, do not worry. You can color this, okay? So if you don't have construction paper, you can color this part to see where it gets really dark. You can color that a nice dark blue or purple. And you can color this part here, your middle ground, a nice light blue or a light green, okay? If you don't have construction paper and glue. So there's two ways to do this. Let's get started. Now I have to figure out how big I'm going to cut this. So since I already drew this line, I'm just going to turn my paper around and I'm just going to line that up with my horizon line right there. Remember where the sky meets the sea. And I'm just going to lift this up a little bit so I can see where the rest of that line is. Okay, here we are. Awesome. And I'm just going to fold it a bit to give myself a marker. Now, once I have it folded, here's the thing. This line does not have to be straight. So I'm going to play with this a little bit and probably just make it a little curvy because the sea has waves. And once I have that, that's the top of it. I can stick that down, you see, because the sea is always moving. So the sea has waves, that's the beginning. This is our background. So we're going to be using crayons for this too, by the way. So by the time we're done, there's not going to be any white space left. Everything is going to be filled with something. So once you have that, you can glue that down. See, quick. Covering our paper very quickly. There you go. Now, that's first. Second, middle ground. we need to draw the rest, put in the rest of the sea. So in this case, you can go ahead, you can line it up at the line right here that separates the middle ground from the foreground where your sand is going to be. And again, lift it up a little bit and take a peek to see where it ends. And you want it to overlap this. So you don't want it to be under, you want it to go over a little bit. All right. So it's okay if you make it a little bigger. Give yourself a fold, give yourself a guide. And just like the first one, and if you don't feel like you can do this freehand, you can draw the curves, okay? So if you feel like, you know, you don't really feel comfortable or you don't feel confident yet, just cutting freehand, you can go ahead and draw those curves in, and that's fine. All right, give yourself a guide. You can go ahead, just cut right along those lines. So you see, there's no one way to do something. There's a couple ways to do something. It really just depends on the materials you have and your comfort level. Okay, put that on the side. And you notice I'm just taking my scraps and putting on the side very neatly because you could use those for something else. Now I'm actually going to flip this over so I don't see the markers. And I'm going to stick that down. I'm gonna curve the edge of that a little bit too sharp. There we go. All right. Well, no, because you're going to be, the sand isn't flat, so that's also going to be curved. So we're going to create that curve with the other layer. And there we go. Now, so we have one more layer down here, which is the sand. Now, if you are drawing this, you're going to want to create curves for where the sea and the sand meet. If you're using construction paper, you can create those curves on this. Remember, we're overlapping. So we call this is a method called layering. So you see, we put the first layer, second layer, now we're doing the third layer. So you can put that there and you can go ahead and take a peek to see where that ends. And you can use a marker or a pencil, whatever you can get your hand on first, it's totally fine. And you can draw another set of curves. And this shows where the sea and the sand meet. So we're using a lot of curves today. There we go. There. Now, once you've done that, you can stick that down. And we've effectively created a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, just like that. But we still have more to do because now we have to turn this into a complete picture. Remember, we are making a sand castle. Just take your time. All right, so that's the beginning. Here we go. Now, let's put this on the side for a minute and let that dry before we start putting any marks on it. And let's make our sand castle. So, of course, it's a sand castle, so it needs to be yellow, just like the sand. You can use another piece of construction paper. And because the sand castle is in the foreground, it really is going to be big. So it's going to come up and it's going to overlap your middle ground because it's in the foreground. So what you would find happening is things in the foreground, not only are they lower on your page, the bottom is lower, but the tops tend to go over. Sometimes they go over the foreground and the middle ground and the background because they're in the front. So the same thing is going to happen with our sand castle. So I'm putting this piece of paper here just to give me a bit of a measurement. I'm not going to put the sandcastle all the way to the bottom of the page. I want to be up a little bit because, you know, if I put it all the way to the bottom of the page, it's going to look a little boring. But if I put it kind of in the middle of where the sand is located on my page, it adds another layer of visual interest. It makes it look very interesting. So you don't want to put it all the way down here. You want to put it a little up. You don't put it up here, mind you. Keep it on the sand. Don't put it at the top of the sand. You want to put your sandcastle kind of right in the middle of that area. All right. Now we haven't drawn it yet and we haven't glued it down yet, but I'm doing this so I can give myself a bit of a measurement. So I'm thinking my sandcastle, I kind of want the top to stop there, using my pencil to help me with that. Okay. Now you can use a pencil or you can use a marker. Either one is fine. And you start drawing it. So what is a sandcastle made of? A sandcastle, I mean, it's a castle, right? So it's really a bunch of triangles and rectangles. So let's draw those triangles and rectangles. So you can have, so most castles, they have what we call turrets, right? So we can do something like this. That has, I'm going to start that over because I really should start in the middle of the page. So you see, it's okay if you have to do something over, it's totally fine. So let's start again. That's the side. And you notice I'm not trying to be perfect. So you don't have to be perfect. That's the top. So I started with one straight line over here. Now I'm drawing another straight line going down. See that? And I put a triangle on top. That's the beginning of my castle. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to draw another line. And another straight line here. So I'm creating a rectangle. Another one. And on top of that, I'm going to put a triangle. Is everybody following along? All right, now that I've done that, next step is, so that's just the, what we call the turrets on the castle, right? Because the castle has a couple of those. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a couple of, I think they call them crenellations, but you don't have to worry about those words. So I'm going to go ahead and draw some of these. You know, these are things you normally see in front of the castle. They're kind of like squares without bottoms. Think about it that way. And then, so you can have that. And then in the back of that, you can have the main turret. So you can have a big triangle. It's up to you how you want it to look. You want to try to put it as much in the middle as possible, but it's not completely in the middle, it's okay. And you draw, that goes all the way down. Right? And here, you can have, you want to put a door here, so you can draw another curved line. You want to have like a sticky top. Another one here. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. And then you do the same thing here, because castles have these really weird looking windows. They're a little bit like eggs that don't have a bottom, you know, just a curved line. And you can do the same thing on the other turrets. And then the next one. So straight line and curved, right? And look at that, you just made a castle. Now if you're happy with how it looks, you can go ahead and go over that with a marker. Now I'm going to use a black marker for the outline for now. I'm also going to use a black marker to color in where those windows are. So we're just taking our time and doing different pieces for our picture. These are all going to come together and be one picture by the time we are done. And you're going to be able to see your foreground, middle ground, and the background. All right. Now, once we're done with this, we're going to put this on the side for a minute and go back to our main page, because this is going to be one of the last things we add before we are done. Now, if you don't want to use black marker, you can use a red marker, you can use a brown marker. You can have a lot of fun with this, but this is your sandcastle. Just go over those lines very carefully. And almost done. Now, remember when we spoke about patterns and repetition last week? We're going to bring that into our picture today, our seascape today. So if you have a scrap piece of paper, you know, it could be any piece of paper. I have a piece of paper here that got kind of dirty, so I'm going to use this. And what you can do here is I want you to start using your black marker or any color marker. I want you to start thinking about some shapes and lines. So, you know, so we're going to create some patterns using shapes and lines. So we can create patterns using circles, right? Because you can create patterns by creating a design using circles and lines and colors. So I'm creating a pattern using circles. You can create a pattern using lines, so straight lines. You can create a pattern using stars, like that. And your straight lines can go in any direction. They can also go in this direction. You can do straight lines across each other, like that. That's another kind of pattern. You can do diamonds, create a pattern using diamonds. And really, a pattern is when you take lines, shapes, colors, and you repeat them over and over. And that's when you create a pattern. When you repeat something over and over, we call that repetition. You can also have wavy lines, kind of like our sea. So we already started some repetition here. You can have swirly lines, like a snail shell. So I hope you're drawing along with me, because this is going to help you decide what kind of patterns you're going to use in your picture. So we're still being a bit inspired by Amos Ferguson, just a little bit. So you can do a bunch of different patterns using lines and shapes. I'm going to stop there, but you can keep on going. Now, let's add some patterns. You can all, right? Lots and lots of dots. So there's a lot of different ways you can create patterns. Now we're going to put some patterns on our sandcastle, because why not? I'm going to switch out my marker. Instead of using a black marker for this, I'm going to use a brown marker. You can use red, you can use green. The only thing you don't want to use is you don't want to use colors like orange and yellow, because they're too light. You won't be able to see them on the yellow construction paper. Now, if you are coloring and you colored your sandcastle yellow, you still want to use a color that's darker than yellow. So any other color except orange, unless you have a really dark orange and yellow, because you will see these against the yellow. So let's go ahead. And I think for my sandcastle, I feel like I just want to do some circles. And I think I'm going to do some circles here on the rectangles and down here by the door. And I think I'm going to do a different kind of pattern on the roofs. So here I have circles. And you know, it just changes the way your picture looks, because now you're adding another layer of interest. You hear I'm saying that again? And when we say that layer of interest, we mean that it's really fun to look at. So instead of just looking kind of flat and boring, now you have a lot more things to look at. And you know, this can take a minute, but it's okay. I'm moving pretty fast, but if you fall behind, that is okay, because you can always go back to this video later on and watch it again. You see how that's changing that? And the other thing that adding these patterns is doing is actually helping us to add some texture to our sandcastle, because remember, sand is really coarse, right? It's gritty. So sand is not flat, not at all. If you don't have markers, you can, and you only have crayons and pencil and paper, that's fine. You can use a different color crayon for this. If you have a really dark pencil, you can use your pencil to go over your crayons to put these patterns in. So you don't have to have all of the stuff I am using. But if you do, by all means, go ahead and use them. So you can go ahead and just add them. And if you want to, you can add a different pattern in this section here as well. I'm going to keep on going with my circles. I'm not going to put, now you notice I'm spacing them out a bit more here. So on these parts here, I'm putting my circles really close together, and here I'm keep putting them far apart. And what that does is that it allows there to be a bit more separation between these, so they don't all look the same. So you can use the same pattern. You can just change it a bit if you want to make sure that things don't start, your parts of your image don't start to blend together and look the same. So I'm just spacing them out a bit more. So hopefully you have a really good marker, because these are a lot of circles. Now, once we're done with this, we're going to add some patterns to our main picture and have some fun with that. There we are. So you notice on this side, just putting them really close together. All right. So we're almost there. We have about 20 more minutes. Just keep on going with your circles. Have a good time with it. You know, shake out your hand if you need to, if your hand starts to hurt a bit. And there you go. All right, so one more to add to it. I'm looking at this and I'm actually thinking that maybe these don't need anything, but I'll think about that at the time I'm finished. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. You know, this is your picture, so you can make these decisions. You can decide, well, you want to put pattern in one area and not in the other. You may want to change your pattern so each of these has a different kind of pattern on it, and that's okay. So those are your decisions, because at the end of the day, this is your picture and everything that you make will be unique because you're a unique person. We're all a little different. We all think differently. We all see things differently. And that means that when we make stuff, they all have their own personality. All right. Almost there. Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm not going to, now that I'm done with this, I'm not going to add any patterns to my roof. I'm going to leave that there. But if you want to, you can add patterns to your roof. Now, the next step, I'm going to cut this out. So take your time, stay on the lines. Go down there. A lot of edges on this, so I'm just going to go very slowly around the edges so I don't mistakenly cut off the top of my sandcastle. So take your time, you don't have to rush. Again, you feel like you're a little behind, it's okay. You can always come back to this video later on or right after we're done with this and finish it up. All right, so once you've cut that out, just put that on the side for now. Now we're coming back to this. Now we need to color our sky. So you definitely need your crayon for this. Your sky is blue. If you want your sky to be pink, you can color it pink. If you want it to be orange, you can color it orange. Remember, you don't have to be super, you don't have to be realistic with this. I'm going to color it blue. And if you want to put clouds in your sky, you can put clouds. I'm just going to color mine a flat blue, but if you want yours to have clouds, go right ahead. And you notice I'm going very carefully around where my C meets the sky because I don't want the crayon to go on my C, but if yours slips a little bit, that's fine. So let's just very quickly color our sky. So you notice that when we draw together, I tend to use a lot of different kinds of art supplies to make artwork because it's a lot of fun. I mean, you can use just one thing, you know, you can decide you want to just use crayons or just use paint or just glue down paper, and that's okay too. But you can also take all of those things and put them together, and that's also fine. All right, let's get that colored. It's not as much as we had to color last time. So we're getting finished pretty quickly on this end. All right, now the next step is you're going to need your black marker. And if you don't have a black marker, really dark pencil is fine, or a dark coloring pencil, or a black crayon, they're all fine. Now we're going to start putting some patterns in our C. Now I'm going to choose one pattern for up here and another pattern for down here. And I'm going to divide them up a little bit so you could see the C moving. So here on the purple, on the purple part where the C gets really dark, let me make some space for myself. I am going to start drawing some curvy lines across the page to show that the waves are moving. So I'm starting from one end of the page, I'm going straight to the other end, all right? So here we go. See, wavy. Straight to the other end. Let's do another one. take it straight to the other end. So that's showing that the C has movement. Again, remember we spoke about repetition. So we're drawing the same line over and over. It's not exactly the same, but it's a curvy line that goes across the page. And I come down here and do the same thing. Now here's what's going to change in our middle ground. I'm not going to put these as close together. So here I put them, those lines pretty close together. Here I'm going to put them a little further apart. So I'll just put one more here because we're now in our middle ground, right? Things are getting bigger. All right. So that is showing that there is movement in our C. Now the next step is we're going to now add some patterns. Okay. So my mic is kind of dropped. Okay, so now we're going to add some patterns. So we have circles, we have lines, we have swirls. So we have stars, we have diamonds, so you could choose any one. But what I want to do is put a different pattern in each of these sections. Okay, so this is another section in here. So let me just draw a black line over the top of that where they separate. There you go. So I have a section here, a section here, a section here, a section here, and I want to put different patterns in each one. So this one up top here, I'm just going to go ahead and draw some lines. I'm going to draw some straight lines, but instead of drawing them up and down, I'm going to draw them on a slant. And you're asking, well, why are we doing this? Because again, it creates visual interest. And remember, the sea is not flat. There's so many things happening in the sea. There's always movement. There's different colors, right? The waves are always crashing. So we're kind of doing something similar in a different way. We're showing that the sea is always different. So that's that section. In this section, I can put dots. And yes, it makes a lot of noise. And it's a lot of fun. You know, you kind of sing along with this while you do it. There we go. We keep on going. Very good. All right, so that's that section. Next section, you know, we could go ahead and we can put in some, I guess, some wavy lines like we did here. So we can go ahead and do some wavy lines. So we're creating a pattern using wavy lines. So they're not long wavy lines, they're short wavy lines. Now we come down to this section. So now we're in our blue section. I'm going to go ahead and draw in some stars because why not? Now these aren't stars, you know, they're kind of, I call these cheating stars. You're just crossing a bunch of lines over each. You just draw a bunch of those. And you notice that as you put these aside, it really gives you a lot to look at. So it makes you want to look more closely at your picture. It makes you want to touch it too, because you're creating some texture with this as well, right? So let's go ahead. We have just 2 more patterns we need to do. We need to draw. All right, now this one, I'm gonna do some swirls because swirls are fun. So you could do them really big like mine, or you could do them really small. Again, you don't have to move as fast as me. You can take your time. And we just have one more to go. And I think this one at the bottom, I'm going to do some lines crisscrossing each other. So we can do some lines going in this direction. So you see how we've used lines to create a lot of texture, a lot of movement, right? Because that's what lines do. And we are going to draw some lines now in the opposite direction. So we're going to draw some lines in the opposite direction. Here we go. So now we just finished our C. So you see what we did there? So this is our middle ground. This is our background. And now we're going to work on our foreground. And we're going to start that by gluing down our castle that we cut out a minute ago. There we are. Stick that down, and you see how that overlaps our middle ground now because our castle is in our foreground. Now let's think about what else we can add to this. Now something else I think I want to add is I want to add a beach ball, because you know you go to the beach, you have a sand castle, you probably have things like shovels, you have a beach ball. Now you can draw your beach ball in, or you can cut it out. I'm going to go ahead and just get a white sheet of paper. Where is it? Oh my, I'm having a rough time finding a white sheet of paper. Oh, I found pink. Pink is fine. We'll use pink. And I'm just going to draw a circle. Now, not too big and not too small. Now that I've drawn it, next step is, of course, it's a beach ball. The beach balls have lines on them, right? And those lines tend to be red. Now you could choose a different color. Red, it's red, it's yellow, and white. But you can go ahead and you can make it blue. You can make it green. So you can choose any color you want, really. You can color that. I think I'm going to stick to red, keep it pretty simple. And you know, maybe I will add, nah, I'll keep it pink. And once you cut that out, you can decide where you want to glue it. So I'm going to create another layer on my drawing, and I'm going to put the ball just a little bit in front of my sandcastle, because it shows by putting the ball a little on top of my sandcastle and a little further down the page, I'm showing that the ball is now in front of the sandcastle. If I try to put it on the side, it would just look like it's on the side of the sandcastle, and it doesn't look that interesting because everything's on the same level. But if you layer it, put it a little lower, put it a little bit on top, now you create what we call more interest and makes it feel a bit more real. Makes you feel like you can walk into your drawing. So I'm not going to add anything else. I'm not going to add any more objects to this picture, but you can go ahead, you can add starfish, you can add a shovel, you can add your bucket that you had your sand in. So I'm going to finish this. You know, I'm looking at this and it doesn't look balanced. I think it needs one more thing. Let's draw that bucket. I changed my mind. See, it's okay to change your mind. I think I'm going to make it a green bucket. So let's go ahead. And you can do the same thing here. You know, think about how big you want your bucket to be, maybe about the size of the beach ball. And you can just draw a line here, kind of at an angle, a straight line on the bottom, another line that goes out, right? And then a top. And you could go ahead and give your, you know, maybe give it a little bit of a, what do you call that? It almost has like a rim to it. So just a curved line. And then you can give it a handle. Now the bucket, you can decide that you may want to add some color and text, some patterns to this as well. So we can go ahead and do that. You can add, maybe you want to add some circles or maybe some lines. If you want. You might also choose a different color, maybe purple, to make the handle a little darker. Now you're coloring on green, so it may not look purple. Well, I mean, actually it's looking pretty purple here. This is a pretty dark marker. And you can do the same thing for the rim. And there you go, you just made a bucket. So let's cut that out. Now, when I put these lines on it, it makes it look like the bucket's made out of straw, but you can choose whatever patterns you want to put on this. And the reason I'm doing is because, like I said, my picture doesn't look balanced. So, you know, we say something doesn't look balanced when maybe one side looks heavier than the other. That means there's too many things on one side and not enough stuff on the other side. And that's how I felt this look. Now, I'm not even going to try to cut this middle piece out. You can try if you want to. But I'm just going to go ahead and add that, right? I can add it closer down to the bottom here. I can let it overlap the way I did my bucket. You know, so you could do either of those things. I think I'm just going to bring it down a bit more. But by putting it closer to the bottom, I'm showing that it is in front of the sandcastle. Now we've done that. If you want to, you can go ahead and put some dots on your sand to give it some texture. So you could use brown, like we used on the sandcastle. You could use another color. And, you know, just have some fun with it. You notice I'm not putting them as close together as I did on my water. But this is just showing that the sand is not flat. And again, if you want to add more stuff, you know, if you want to add some starfish, maybe a crab, you know, there's always crabs on the beach. You might want to add the shovel you use. Maybe you have more than one bucket, right? Maybe you had a float that you were using. You can add all of those to your picture. And there you go. That is your, so this is your day at the beach. Day at the beach making sandcastles. So you can't go to the beach right now, but you can create the beach for yourself. And we use layering to show where the foreground is, the middle ground, and the background. So just remember, as things come closer to you, they get bigger and they look like they're lower on the page or lower in front of you. And as they go further away, they get smaller and they look like they're going up. And that's how we create a seascape. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this. And I really look forward to seeing your creations.